Everyone, we will call the City Council meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Vision Fund Committee. And first order of business is roll call and determination of the quorum.
Lorente. Here. Scott. Wright. Clayton. Here. Peterson. Here. Doyle. Here. Lewis. Here. Roberts. Here. Sasso. Here. Nordstrom. Here. We have quorum.
And the next order of business is the invocation, will be led by Councilmember Ron Sasso. Everyone please rise.
God, thank you for this day, and thank you for those who are here tonight. And I ask that you guide us. Give us peace. Give us the comfort that only you can give. I ask for wisdom for each and every member on this dais tonight, as well as those who are presenting this evening. And as it says in Thessalonians, let us never tire of doing what is right. In the name of your precious Son, Lord Jesus, we praise you. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tonight we have two items on the agenda. One is a presentation from the Civic Center, and the other is discussion and direction. And keeping with past practice on the Vision Fund Committee, the Vision Fund Committee is a committee of the City Council, and it is a recommending body to the City Council, and it is chaired by our City Council President, which is Bonnie Peterson. I will not be going far away. I'll be sticking around to watch this very exciting presentation, and will now turn the floor over to Bonnie Peterson.
Thank you. Okay, the presentation. I don't know, you probably know who's up better than I do. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Quaker, Madam President, council members, and city staff. My name is Dr. Jeffrey Bailey, and I'm a member of the Board of Directors of the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center. It's my distinct pleasure to be with you this evening. Please allow me to begin by expressing the sincere appreciation and gratitude of the board, management, and staff of the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center for the opportunity to appear before you tonight. Joining us this evening are Rich Huffman, President of the Board of Directors, John Herr, Vice President, Chris Halgo, Board Member, Al Cornella, Board Member, Brian Molesky, General Manager of the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center, Jane Kramer, Assistant General Manager, Tracy H., Assistant General Manager of Finance, and Sandra Schur, Administrative Assistant. During our time together, we'll be presenting on the current state of our treasured Don Barnett Arena, a facility that I'm sure we can all agree has served our community exceedingly well over the past 35 years of operation. However, it's because of her illustrious service that we find ourselves before you as we consider the future requirements of maintaining such a wonderful facility. A multi-purpose structure that since 1977 has been a showcase of entertainment, municipal use, and civic pride, not only to the citizens of Rapid City and the surrounding Black Hills community, but to our guests and visitors from around the world. We're here this evening to open a much-needed dialogue about the prized facility, not only in terms of the past and present, but most of all about the promise of the future and the prospects that lie ahead. This evening, you'll receive a considerable amount of detail and information relative to the operational position of the Barnett Arena. We've enlisted a respected group of talented individuals to help share our vision with you and with the community. This talent, by the way, includes local expertise in addition to specialized professionals with a vast amount of international exposure and experience in accurately forecasting the possibilities of what could be. To begin our discussion on the status of the Barnett Arena, it's my pleasure to introduce the General Manager of the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center, Mr. Brian Molesky.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, council members. I really do appreciate you taking another night out of your busy schedules to listen to our visions here tonight. As you're aware of, from the recent commemoration of the 40th anniversary of the 1972 flood held at the Civic Center, the vision for the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center, and truly the vision for the future of Rapid City, was truly born from this tragedy. Now, 35 years later, after opening in 1977, at the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center, opening with Elvis Presley, we are starting to see some major deficiencies and honestly some major issues with the grand old girl that we call the Don Barnett Arena. Foremost and first is a lack of ADA compliance. We predate ADA by nearly a decade. There is no true ADA accessible seating. The aisle widths are insufficient. They do not have railing. There is no ADA compliant elevators in all of the Don Barnett Arena, and there's only one. We need more to serve 8,000 people. There's no true ADA restrooms on the main level, and we're lacking in sheer numbers of restrooms on that main level, especially female restrooms. There's no ADA accessibility to the concession stands or the merchandise areas. There's no ADA ingress or egress in the actual doors to the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center Don Barnett Arena. There's no ADA accessible locker rooms or shower stalls or even lockers. There's no ADA accessibility to the backstage. There's no elevators to get the stars up and down to the star dressing rooms. The roof itself does not comply with the modern snow load requirements, and the roof cannot handle with its trussing system the weight requirements for the modern concerts. And even after 2 major electrical upgrades that we've done in the last 10 years, we are sorely lacking in show power and electrical requirements. We have insufficient lighting throughout the Barnett Arena, and it is incapable of doing blackouts, which is required for most events. We have insufficient sound coverage, and I think the telltale sign is the Don Barnett Arena predates the very first IBM PC computer. Second major areas, we need to stay competitive. I think it's been well documented in the paper and on the news, on the television, and on the radios that our friends just east of us, Sioux Falls, are building a new 12,000 to 15,000 seat arena. Now that's just the fixed seats. That's not the seats that go on the floor for a concert. And one of their pitches is that they should be the sole site for the South Dakota High School Athletic Association state events going into the future. What's less well known and probably less well publicized is that they have already broken ground on a 162-acre Sanford Sports Complex, which features an 85,000 square foot field house, a 5-sided building they're calling the Pentagon that includes 9 basketball courts, 2 of which are pro-based courts, an ice facility that has 3 sheets of ice under one roof, and a yet-to-be-determined number of indoor tennis courts and outdoor soccer fields. 35 years ago, when the Don Barnett Arena opened, it fit well as a 10,000 capacity arena between Denver and Minneapolis. It got us on a number of the major concert tours. Today, to accomplish that same requirement, to be on these major concerts, we need to be in that 17,000 seats, fixed seats, plus everything that's on the floor then, to be in those same type of concert tours. Coming up, you will see the vision of the future of the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center and its economic impact on the city of Rapid City. What you will see in the coming minutes is the vision for adding 2 parking garages at the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center. What you will see in the coming minutes is a vision for the repurposing of the Don Barnett Arena. And what you will see in the coming minutes is a vision to add a new 15,000 to 18,000 seat arena at the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center.
Thank you, Brian. We'd now like to show a 7-minute video. It's a production relating to the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center, the Barnett Arena, and our shared vision. The video was produced by Dawn Claymore and her very talented staff at Midwest Marketing of Rapid City.
The city offers many big city convenience, but a small town feel.
I was born and raised in Rapid City, stayed here my whole life. I love it. A great place to raise your kids, great place to work.
I was born and raised in the Black Hills, and I've been all over the United States rodeoing and whatnot. Just can't find any other place that I can call home other than this.
People definitely view the Civic Center as the hub of all activities.
Rapid City is a hidden gem.
For the past 35 years, the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center has been a critical part of our community. It not only provides cultural and entertainment opportunities for our citizens, but tremendous economic impact.
You see, I don't think the Civic Center is an indicator of growth. I think the Civic Center is the catalyst for the growth in Rapid City.
Any event at the Civic Center that draws traffic to Rapid City is definitely a boon to all business, whether or not it's retail, the hotel industry, the restaurant industry, etc.
The Civic Center is a wonderful organization that brings us amazing entertainment, and the offshoots of that is all of us downtown enjoy the fruits of that.
Once you know that game's over, the doors open and people just bombard the place.
I think the key is providing a quality event, no matter what it is.
The Civic Center provides millions of dollars of economic impact to our community, not only in lodging and restaurant industries, but also in retail shops. And in the end, all citizens of Rapid City benefit from that economic impact.
Take a look at the people. There are 40 full-time employees, 760 part-time employees at the Civic Center. That equates to a nearly $4 million a year payroll at the Civic Center alone.
The biggest value we have is that we cater to the people of Rapid City.
We've got such a great relationship with the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center. You know, other GMs envy me when they come in here and they say what a great relationship we have, and you know, we work very well together, and that's just so important for future success and being long-term.
We put on events for the whole surrounding area to come through. It doesn't just serve Rapid City.
Civic Center brings that business from our 3 state sisters from around the region. They bring all of that to Rapid. I don't have to advertise outside of Rapid to get that business here. They do it for us.
So we have to travel from here to Rapid City to attend those major events, those large concert events, to the Rush games, to the state basketball tournaments or wrestling tournaments. It offers us fairly close commute to be able to entertain our family.
I think that if we look at what's happening in our community right now with Presidential Plaza downtown, the Main Street Square, and now the proposed promenade, Rapid City is on the front end of a renaissance, and our downtown is more vibrant than it's ever been before.
The biggest thing that we need to accomplish with looking at the Don Barnett Arena is, okay, this facility was the right facility back in 72 or 73 or 74. But what's going to be the right facility in 2025? What's going to be the right facility in 2030?
We've been losing some events, not a lot, that we should have had, and we've lost those events because of the condition of the Barnett Arena. Well, those few events that we've lost are the first few raindrops. And if we don't address the issue of the aging Barnett Arena, we're eventually going to lose more and more and more events as that arena becomes less and less viable.
In order to remain competitive with other facilities in the region, we are at a crossroads. We must update that facility in order to remain competitive and enjoy the success that we've had in the past.
The Civic Center has always been a major feature of Rapid City area, and really the continued need for expanding the facilities is really no surprise. Our city keeps on expanding and growing, and the needs are significant.
We have over 900 events a year at the Civic Center. That is an increase over the last 10 years of 74%. The population of Rapid City in that same 10-year time frame has grown approximately 14%.
Rapid City has grown a lot since 1972, and Rapid City will grow a lot before the year 2025. So the easiest thing to look at is the sheer size. It needs to be bigger.
So really, we're just keeping up with the demands of the city and of the region, really.
What we're talking about here overall is not just the arena. We're talking about parking. We need parking and an arena. And the parking, in my mind and the minds of many other people, is first and foremost of the idea for this project.
When you go beyond just the sheer size of the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center and how it has grown or will need to grow as the city of Rapid City grows, you also look at the technology. And you look back to 1972 and the technology then versus the technology that we have today and the technology we're going to have 20 years from now. That's probably one of the greatest increases, the greatest needs that we will see with the replacement for the Don Barnett Arena.
The original purpose of the 2012 funds, now called the Vision Funds, in the 1970s was to fund the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center. What we're proposing is bringing the Vision Fund back to its roots. In addition to that, we're not proposing taking the entire penny. We'd be taking the half penny of the Vision Fund and using it for the Civic Center and going out for a bond. And the other half of the penny will still be used for capital improvements as it has been for many years.
A project like this can really be very inspiring. You start understanding what people really desire for our community to aspire to. The facility can really become an icon of our city and our region.
What do we need to do for Rapid City, for the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center, to continue to be as important to the city of Rapid City for the next 35 years as it has been for the last 35 years? And that's truly the replacement of the Don Barnett Arena.
The Civic Center is the crown jewel of our community. It was established as the crown jewel of our community in the early 70s, and it is now time to polish that crown jewel.
Next, please allow me to introduce Mr. David Stone, a Principal Associate of Economics for AECOM. AECOM is a Fortune 500 company that serves clients in approximately 130 countries, posting a revenue of $8.1 billion in 2011. AECOM is one of the largest, if not the largest, architectural and engineering firms in the world. Mr. Stone was retained to conduct an independent analysis of the economic impact of a new event center at the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. David Stone.
Just want to make sure my presentation loads before I get too far. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having me here. I will, without too much ado, building off of that original introduction. Again, I'm David Stone with AECOM Economics. Quick introduction beyond what Jeff already said about myself and our firm. We were up to about 5 years ago when we were purchased by AECOM, which is again a Fortune 500 company. It stands for Architecture, Engineering, Construction, Operations, and Maintenance. So we do a little bit of everything throughout these processes. I work for a standalone consulting firm called Economics Research Associates before we were bought by AECOM. We go by AECOM Economics. Were and still are generally real estate and land use planners and consultants. We do feasibility, economic impact, other types of planning studies for really just about anything you can put on a piece of land. My work focuses specifically on what I would consider to be sports and recreation and entertainment and convention/meetings facilities. And actually, Brian found us because I had done this similar work in Sioux Falls about a year and a half ago now. So just a quick outline to walk you through my set of slides for the next 15 minutes or so. First thing I want to do is kind of give a brief introduction to economic impacts, because that's the kind of thing that if 10 people say that, you might have 10 different definitions. So I wanted to kind of talk for a minute about what economic impact really is and what it isn't. Then we'll kind of walk through our study and the numbers and the projections that we came up with. And I do want to warn you that, especially now that you've just seen this video, unlike architects who are really good at taking these exciting things and making them look even more exciting, I like to think we're really good at taking these exciting things and making them really boring by reducing them to numbers and figures on a black and white piece of paper. So we have about a 40-page report, and I don't want to get lost in the details too much as I go through this, but we have a 40-page report. All the minutiae is in there. If you have insomnia, I recommend you read it before you go to bed. So hopefully I'll give a good overview of what we did the last couple months without, again, getting too bogged down in the details. Again, what economic impacts are and what they aren't. Generally, so in this case, we're looking at the economic impacts of the Civic Center to Rapid City specifically. So that means we're considering people who come from outside of Rapid City spending money inside the city because of their trip to attend an event or to do something at the Civic Center. So we look at things such as spending that comes out of people's pockets, directly out of the pockets at the complex, such as for tickets, food and beverage, merchandise, novelties, things like that. They're spending throughout the city, hotels, restaurants, entertainment, things like that. That is, again, what we consider to be the direct spending, which, again, comes out of someone's pocket and is spent here in Rapid City. Then, through the use of what we call multipliers, we estimate later rounds of spending. As that money comes out of someone's pocket, it's spent and respent in Rapid City, and eventually it leaves the city entirely, but we're able to estimate what those later rounds within the city are worth. That leads us to what we consider to be the total spending impacts to Rapid City, and from that, we're able to make estimates of some other things, such as how many hotel room nights that generates, and how many jobs that spending supports to residents of Rapid City, and the income associated with those jobs, and as well as the tax revenues that are directly generated from that spending. Sorry. So to do all of that, we have to make a lot of assumptions. In this case, because there's a great history of operations here, we're able to benefit from actual operations, actual results, ticket sales, things like that. So very important, for example, and a very important assumption we make is where people are coming from. Are they from Rapid City or from outside of Rapid City? Well, I've got a slide in a couple minutes that show percent of ticket sales for various events that come from Rapid City versus outside of Rapid City. So we've got a great base to work off of here, actual results. We also make assumptions regarding things like, well, when these people come in, do they stay overnight? Do they just come in and out for the day? What do they spend for various types of things, whether it's at the complex, outside of the complex, for food and beverage, for hotels, et cetera? We also are able to benefit from tourism research, tourism studies that the state's done on a county level regarding daily spending by tourists. This is kind of a very crude way, one last kind of illustration of showing what we're really interested in doing this study. So we looked at two different scenarios for the future. And the future year we picked was 2020. So we've got, and again, this is not to scale or anything like that, but just really to illustrate, we're looking at, so we have this as a starting point, the impacts of the complex today, and we were interested in these two future scenarios. As it happens, because of a lot of the things that Brian said about the condition of Barnett Arena, in the future we see the usage of the facility going down in the first scenario we looked at, which is a scenario that assumes no major changes are made at the complex. The second scenario that we compared it to was the scenario with the new arena, and under that scenario we saw the impacts going up, and what we were really interested in is what's that difference between these two right here, and we'll quantify that, and that's kind of what I go through the rest of this, the rest of the presentation, the rest of these slides. So these next set of couple slides shows kind of what, excuse me, what the complex has done over the last few years, because we used this largely as a base for our future projections of the two other scenarios. So I just want to briefly touch on these. As an example here, here's an average demand calendar for the complex for the last few years, over 1,100 events per year. The ones we really focused on were these. Not including these other, what we call the other events at the bottom. So it's really these 400 events, and with the vast majority of the attendance, over 1.1 million people. The other event category were smaller events, generally locally attended, sometimes internal staff meetings, things like that, that we didn't include in the impact projection. So we're concerned with these approximately 400 events. I hope I don't overuse this stylus. I just learned how to use it before the presentation. Thought I'd take advantage of it. So as I mentioned before, and hopefully this isn't too small to see, examples of sample events from the last few years, and based on the ticket sales reports, where people were buying tickets from. So we've got hockey games, a sample of concerts, and a sample of other ticketed entertainment events over the last few years. And if you look at this second column here, you'll see, about half of the hockey attendees came from outside of Rapid City. In general, the other events, anywhere from about a quarter to three-quarters of attendees came from outside of the city. The interesting thing about this, I think, is that of these events in this table here, all but I think 2 or 3 took place in what I would consider to be your non-high tourism season. So generally the season for these events runs from fall to spring, when tourism is otherwise lower here. The complex is doing a great job of bringing people into town, again, outside of the main tourism season. I don't want to spend too much time on these numbers either, but just kind of to show you the revenues generated by the complex itself over the last few years, about $8 million a year. It doesn't include ticket sales, which aren't kept by the complex itself. It goes to the promoters who put on the events, but that's something we consider in the impact calculation. So I want to move on from this, and the next set of slides, really the rest of the presentation, I'll be showing you basically summary tables of that flow out of all the assumptions and calculations we made, again, without hoping not to get lost in all the detail, which is all in the report. So as I touched on before, we looked at 2 scenarios, one in which nothing significant changes at the complex, and as was said by multiple people, I believe already, the Barnett Arena in particular has already seen a drop-off in its usage, and we would assume that would continue to happen over the years as these issues aren't addressed. The second scenario is with the new arena. We've assumed 15,000 seats, very multi-purpose facility that could do a little bit of everything, including a full field, football field, indoor soccer, concerts, all other kinds of entertainment, meeting events, the parking deck that was mentioned, and some new hotel rooms to help serve increased demand and for larger and more convention events. So this, most of the impacts kind of flow out of the usage of the facility in general. So we show all the way to the left, just as a comparison, the last year, 2011, you see about 400 events, 1.1 million people. Again, in the what we call the as-is scenario, basically every event category drops off a little bit, and we have it going down to about 350 events and 970-some thousand attendees. In the new arena scenario, kind of the opposite happens. The event demand increases, over 500 events and over 1.7, close to 1.8 million people. There are a lot of numbers and zeros and commas on this page, so I don't want to spend too much time on this one either, but essentially similar as the last slide, but this shows the revenues generated by the complex both last year as a comparison to the two future scenarios we looked at. And again, it's the same pattern, essentially, that the revenues go down in the as-is scenario and go up in the new arena scenario. And again, I don't want to focus on this one too much and get lost in the numbers. So I'm gonna move forward. So from here is where I start to show some of the summary tables of all our calculations and assumptions. This one shows, and maybe I should have mentioned earlier, I mentioned how what we really consider to be impacts are the people who come from outside of Rapid City. That's kind of step two. The first step, we actually look at the spending from everybody, including the people who live in Rapid City. That's what we consider to be the gross impacts, and then we later deduct those to get to the true economic impacts, which we consider to be the net economic impacts. So this table shows for both scenarios the spending both within the complex and throughout the city by everyone who attends events at the complex. And you see 87-some million compared to 164 million, and you see the room nights that flow out of that based on assumptions of visitation and who stays overnight and things like that. So from here, then the next table will be a parallel table, but what we do is get rid of the spending by local residents. So the numbers go dramatically down because, of course, a lot of the people who will use the complex will be from Rapid City. So this includes just the share of people who come from outside of Rapid City and their spending. So those numbers go to about $43 million and $80 million. So from there, the next thing we do is apply the multipliers, which moves the numbers back up a little bit from the spending being circulated throughout the city economy before it leaves the city. So in this case, the federal government comes up with these multipliers, and they're specific for every individual market, and they're specific multipliers for every industry and every type of spending. Generally, in this case, the multipliers were around 1.4, which essentially means if you can take the numbers from the previous slide, multiply them by 1.4, and that gets you your total spending impact. So if I were to pick one number or one set of numbers to focus on, as if you ask what are the economic impacts, it would be these two numbers for each scenario, the $60 million and the $113 million. And I have a table. The last slide at the end summarizes all of this. So those are the spending impacts. Again, it's literally directly coming out of someone's pocket and recirculating throughout the economy. Based on those numbers, we're able to estimate what that translates to jobs for people who live in Rapid City and the income associated with those jobs. Again, similar pattern. The numbers for the new arena scenario are a lot higher than they are for the as-is scenario, including more employment, more jobs supported by greater levels of spending in the different industries, and greater income associated with those more jobs. This table, this slide, summarizes the tax revenues that flow out of that spending. So the top half of the table is the four portions of the 8.5% sales tax. And if you look all the way to the right, you see the different groups that receive the 2%, the 1%, 1.5%, then the 4%, everyone from the city all the way to the state. And then the lower part of the table is the tax that will be generated by the CVB bid tax, the $2 per night per hotel room based on the room nights projected. Again, the numbers for the new arena scenario are significantly higher than they are for the as-is scenario, and you see, again, for each component of the sales tax and every recipient, the different amounts. One thing I think I forgot to mention up front when I kind of introduced impacts. So we do that. What we did was for 1 year of operations, and those impacts would all recur on an annual basis. They would vary based on different levels of event usage and things like that, but they would happen year to year to year. We can also do the similar exercise for the construction project. It would only happen one time, of course, during the from the construction project itself. But it's a similar exercise based on a very preliminary estimate of $125 million construction cost and assumptions of what percent of construction workers would live in the city, what share of other spending would go to locally based firms. We're able to make some estimates of what that would mean in income and further construction job creation to local residents. And in this case, on the public construction project, what that would mean, the one applicable tax is the state excise tax. So we're able to estimate what that would mean to that tax at the state level. And then I'll skip through this slide. I have one last slide, and it's really it's the summary of the summaries, I guess. It takes the really the most important line from each of the tables that I've gone through. Shows again the two scenarios, and here it shows the increment, which is basically A minus B equals C, the difference from those two columns. And again, you can see that the difference in the numbers are pretty significant. These are all zero because we assume no construction in the as-is scenario. It just construction just doesn't apply there, so it's all in the new arena scenario. But even at the top half, again, you see the kind of striking differences between the two, and again, it all kind of flows out of the greater event and attendance levels in the new arena scenario than the as-is scenario. Thank you for your time. That's my presentation. I guess we're holding questions to the end. I'm happy to answer any questions. Again, hopefully I didn't get you too bogged down in theory and numbers. But I'll turn it back over to Jeff here.
Thank you, David. Some of you might know the next member of our strategic team. He's a local architect from ARC International, here to present some conceptual designs on the proposed expansion, Mr. Donovan Broberg.
I believe we're going to watch a little introductory video virtual tour of the design, and then I'm going to set up to visit with you about the drawings and such.
Not sure. So if there should be a virtual tour video fly through. Here we are.
Thank you. Again, I'm Donovan Broberg, and about 18 years ago, I was a few years into my professional career as an architect, and as my wife and I knew we were starting a family, we made the choice to move from the big city of Minneapolis back to my wife's roots in the Black Hills area, and we settled in Rapid City. Have been here for 18 years and have enjoyed growing up in my career, and about 13 years ago started ARC International, and been serving the Civic Center for many of those years, and the city itself, and we just love doing business in this area. It's just it's a great community, so it's a blessing to be a part of this exciting project as well. So we've kind of dubbed this a generic name as the Center at Rushmore Plaza, and of course it kind of goes back to their little tagline, the center of it all, and really they are, and we're going to be talking about what makes this center and this expansion project of the center so significant. But I want to start by just looking at our region here, and I guess I'm going to also be following this on a PowerPoint. So multi-dimensional here. I'm used to just standing behind drawings and letting them speak for themselves, but I'll try to keep up on all facets of it here. So, okay, so you can follow me in front here or up on the screen. That's fine. You know, as you travel about the area, you see that our city and our region really has a lot of draw from a very significant area. Many people throughout the region, you travel 150, 200 and more miles away in your business or with your family, and you'll cross paths with people that are drawn to our area, certainly for the tourism and the natural beauty, but also at the center of that is the events, the activities, the cultural opportunities, the entertainment. I just in the last few weeks have crossed paths with people up in northeastern Montana, up in the oil fields of North Dakota. They talk about coming to the Black Hills, to Rapid City, to the events at the Civic Center. It's fun to know that you have such a large draw and influence, and you see the area that you impact, and certainly it's been shown that you draw from all the states and several countries, but certainly the biggest impact is from this area shown in the highlight. And we just want to show how we need to continue to be the provider of the needs for this region. And we have introduced that the existing facility, the Don Barnett Arena, is challenged to meet those demands. And so we look at what is the standard for this generation of facility. And we don't have to look too far. We have the Midwest United States region represented on the drawing, and several highlights of facilities, cities and facilities that are providing that next generation of facility. And that's the standard that we've looked at and tried to understand and apply it to the conceptual needs for the future of the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center. You can look to Grand Forks and Fargo, the Alaris Center in Grand Forks, the Fargo Dome. Several of those are little images here on the boards, but those facilities are both designed around the size of a football field and accommodate 17 to 21,000 people for an event like that. Other facilities that are newer and more up to date, the Amsoil Center in Duluth, the Rimrock Auto Center in Billings. A little bit smaller facilities, very similar in their growing and their response and their development to the continued demand, especially with technology, flexibility, adaptability. We show several other even larger venues. I even have my beautiful Metrodome from Minneapolis on there.
we offer that as it's 30 years old, this year, and next year it will be in a grave, and so it's there is for the facilities that are outdated and not serving in such a short time frame. We look forward to having a better story than the Metrodome does, but there is quite a cycle of things that go on in providing for the needs of the venue that you have. Our next slide brings us to the heart or the center of Rapid City, and I display here the downtown and the area around the Civic Center is kind of the heart or the center of the city. It certainly is geographically, but what I really want to convey here is it's not talking about downtown versus the developing fringe. It's really talking about having a healthy center, a healthy nucleus, and that's what we have. We're the synergy of the business and the organizations that work and thrive within Rapid City. At the core, being a healthy core, ripples and permeates throughout the whole city, and it's really a benefit for anything that calls itself Rapid City, or even those things that call themselves the Black Hills and associate with the health and the success of a solid core. Zooming in a little bit closer to we look at the center of the campus, the center of the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center campus that was set aside after the 72 flood, a large area. It's a benefit to us all that a significant area of geography was provided for this development, and it has really grown and matured in a very steady, healthy fashion over the years. As we will kind of drift between a couple of slides, but this gets us in a little bit closer to the structures itself, and you see in the yellow highlights the original facility that was planned, designed, and built in the mid-70s. Really, it was the beginning of a perpetual, every decade, another chapter is born, another chapter unveiled, and needs are responded to. In the 70s, we replaced some old auditoriums downtown that had been banished and such and unused for a while, but we built a 1,750-seat theater along with LaCroix Hall, a small banquet facility, and then also at the time, I think the 10,000-seat arena, although now it's limited to 9,400 seats. The people that planned that had great vision and foresight to provide for something that would last several generations. Growing on that, in the 1980s, you see the Rushmore Hall Convention Center expansion, providing for the needs of trade shows and other floor events that didn't necessarily get provided for in the smaller LaCroix Hall. But the original facility, along with the expanded facility, continued to grow and meet the demands of the needs of the events that were and activities of the area. In the mid-90s, Rushmore Hall expanded even more. It was such a success, it grew even more, and then added the food court as well, which is it was certainly a response to providing for the total experience of the visitor, not just providing a trade show or floor space, but events became more strategic, and you had a great experience coming to the Civic Center. And of course, walking a little bit further forward, in the middle 2000s, the advent of the ice arena became apparent. The need became apparent. We started to realize that the Don Barnett Arena, with the way it was designed around a basketball court, did not meet the needs
the ice, facilitating the larger ice venue. And then also we did not have, we were beginning to understand that ADA, wheelchair seating and such was not able to be feasible in a real opportunistic way within the arena. So the new ice arena was built and surrounded by 51 to 5,700 seats, depending on the event that you had, and it facilitates obviously a great new team that everybody's excited about, and some other smaller events. So it really brings us to the cusp of here we are now, already almost a decade later. We're entering the 2010s or the 2010s, and it seemed like just yesterday we were doing a grand opening for the Rush, and then they won a championship a couple of years later. And I bet time does travel fairly quickly, and we are now on the cusp of how do we meet the continued demands and for the next generation of events. One of the things I wanted to highlight was how well the existing facility has been kept up and just continues to allow for good expansion, good growth, good response to the continued growing needs. The entire facility, existing facility under this roof, a few 100,000 square feet, has a whole new roof under it, over the top of it, I should say. And the exterior walls, the envelope of the building, as we call it, is very appropriate. It's well designed, well constructed, well maintained. We have a building that we can easily add on to and support. Recently, the energy plant right now we are seeing the energy plant being upgraded to support not only the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center campus, but across the street the whole Rapid City Central High School campus and its very significant expansion. So we have an energy plant that continues to serve two very large campuses within our city, and it's well equipped to continue to accommodate and grow with the future expansion of the Civic Center. Before we go on to talk about the expansion of a large arena stadium, we wanted to talk first about parts of the campus that really already have some current demands, and that first and foremost is parking. A few years ago, parking was expanded on the southeast corner, but it is crossing Fifth Street. So as we looked at the demand of parking and people, there's certainly a perceived need, if not a real need, and we want to solve that problem as we go forward in proposing additions and such to the Civic Center. And the first suggestion is for accommodating significant parking growth is to add 2,000 cars in a 6-story parking ramp along the very north side of the facility. So without going outside your boundaries of 5th Street, North Street, and Mount Rushmore Road, we can add 2,000 parking spots without taking any away. That parking ramp would be very similar to the size and layout of the expanded parking ramp downtown for Pennington County that has just been recently completed. There was a little clip of it in the video showing the number of stories. So, and the thing about this is we'd probably have to take away our sliding hill on the north side of the, and I apologize for that, but you can actually, there's a 50-foot drop-off between North Street and the parking areas down below. And so into that hillside, we would carve 6 stories of parking, and you would access up high and have quick access to 5th Street or to I-90. So we would really improve our traffic in and out of, especially out of, making sure that that's quick release and growing the parking here significantly. If the 2,000 cars certainly would meet the current demand, but we want to continue to grow with the other demands that might happen. We've also speculated that another 1,500 cars additionally could be expanded just south of that area between just north of the Rushmore Plaza Holiday Inn area. So up to 3,500 cars within a parking facility on site. No streets to cross, so pedestrians aren't jumping and crossing traffic and such. So, and makes for a better experience for visiting the Civic Center. And then, of course, we move on to probably the main event. Well, here's a little clip again of the parking ramp looking from the northeast. So you'd access there along North Street at a couple of locations, and imagine you could wind down several stories, and you could exit either down below or back up onto North Street. I slipped that one in at the last minute here, and I forgot about it. So, as we focus in on the major expansion that is being suggested, we want to. You can kind of get your bearings here with the octagon shape of the Don Barnett Arena, and so you can kind of get your bearings. And then the expansion is basically this large development to the west, and it stretches basically all the way from the west wall of the existing arena to near Mount Rushmore Road. I want to focus in a little bit on the repurposing of Don Barnett Arena first, or just kind of build the understanding, I guess, that why we're proposing a facility of the size and magnitude that it is. If I wander back to the original construction here, you'll see the Don Barnett Arena is built around a small basketball court. A basketball court, imagine a cookie sheet that's 50 foot wide by 94 feet long. Give it some boundaries or some out of bounds and a little bit of room around the edges, and you end up with a plate that's 60 feet by 100 feet. And from there, everything was designed, seating and such, sight lines to go up from a 60 by 100 foot venue. So anything that can fit within that, and certainly a basketball court does great and a volleyball court does great, but you don't have to go too far before you are fumbling out of bounds to do anything else. And I think the Civic Center has seen that over the years. As you get into bigger events, you compromise a significant amount of seating and ability to really carry out that event in a successful way. The ice arena was a little bit bigger. 85 by 200 is the size of an ice arena, and that's very well laid out to accommodate that venue. But again, with 5,100 seats and that size, it doesn't take you too long to get to events that need more seating, more flexibility, more adaptability, or a larger venue than what the ice arena provides. So that is why we are looking at designing around a football field. Okay, the football field is along with appropriate boundaries and sidelines and such, ends up being 200 feet wide by 400 feet long. I can easily get 4 of the ice rinks within that same footprint with room to spare on the sidelines. But the size of the football field obviously accommodates one of the most significant events that we do in North America, very popular, and would be frequently used at our local Civic Center facility. But it's not the main thing. But it is the size that we can begin to plan all other events around and accommodate all the other potential venues. When we wrap seating around the venue, the football field venue, we're able to easily accommodate the 15,000 to 20,000 that have those numbers of seats that have been suggestive here. Now, honing in on the exact number will be a study of the most appropriate need and how to build that. But it's easily accommodates those types of numbers and would meet that demand. And speaking of seating, one of the most significant things that we've talked about, the problems with the seating in the existing arena, is that it does not meet handicap accessibility, does not meet wheelchair seating requirements. Those issues became law in the early 90s. It significantly changed how people in our world can accommodate or can attend and be part of functions that are a normal part of most people's world. But most of our older facilities are very awkward in responding to that. It's very difficult to adjust. The existing arena does its best to provide about 18 seats in one area that are suggested that they're handicap accessible or wheelchair accessible. They're a far cry from meeting all the letter of the code, but they are the best that we can do to provide for that. The new facility, just codes would suggest that we're going to provide 10 times that many seats for wheelchairs and other access issues, and we'll have them dispersed around in about 24 different locations. And it becomes a facility that people are attracted to and everybody can use. It's an awesome thing when you just start to see people using your facility that could not otherwise use it last week or last year. It's a great service to our community. There's a lot of exciting images of the larger stadium venue, and they're projections of what it could look like. It has the opportunity to be very attractive, very much an icon to Rapid City and the Black Hills. But I do want to kind of bring this back to again, the Don Barnett, the existing arena. As this idea, the concept matured, as we worked it around with the staff and of the Civic Center and others that had great input, we really didn't want to see that just destroyed and taken down and replaced. We saw that it had a good shell, a good roof. It's a great space, and it really should strive for being repurposed. And so we did look at many ideas. We've dubbed it the Don Barnett Pavilion, and it will be a great opportunity to be a place of arrival for events at the Civic Center and for any event. And it can be a forum for pre-function spaces, for mixers, for some retail space, some eateries. There's even a space suggested for specialty events. It could be a small theater or even an IMAX type thing, or there's space for that. We're certainly not hanging our hats on anything specific, but there's opportunities for that to be a gem in itself and make the experience of the visitor to Rapid City and to the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center a great event. As we go forward, we have, again, a number of images of the exterior, and I'm going to bring you through a number of the interior images that we created with a computer model and overlay sketches. Again, the football field being one of the major pieces. Here's a concession stand. We named each of the four corners after a local watering hole. This one's Pactola. So, but it really starts to come to life with the activity and the interaction that could happen during a neat event. Here's a concourse full of people. And we get to one of the main things that's mentioned quite often is attracting major concerts and shows. And a facility like this gives those that seek out those shows and the opportunity to bring those major events to Rapid City, an opportunity to land them. With the floor area, and you could easily hit 25,000 people within the house, in addition to the regular seats that you have. And if the Boss or the Kenny Chesney isn't your deal, we do have Lady Gaga. I probably won't be at that event. But in addition to that, the Civic Center needs to be the center at Rushmore Plaza needs to respond to all these demands. And you have many of them that you're aware of every day. And so whether it's indoor soccer, this facility can easily accommodate and adapt to those needs. Fun things like the indoor motocross could easily be quickly set up to do indoor vehicle events, monster truck type stuff, or carnivals. Rodeos and stock shows are, let's see, did I go out of order? There we go. Great rodeos. We do great rodeos already, but the facility could really attract major shows, more major events and rodeos that are part of our culture here. And of course, facilitating basketball and regular events, the LNI or state events are always important things. And really this thing can expand and contract and move around. And this size of facility and along with the technology that would be applied would really be a great response to the needs of the area for Rapid City. I'll leave you with this overview. Thank you.
Thank you, Donovan. For a return appearance, let's call back Brian Molesky to the lectern to tie up some remaining ends, and then we'll be most pleased to entertain questions from the council.
Thank you. You know, one thing I guess I wanted to say here a little bit, we talked about it just briefly there, but talking about the facilities around us, and I talked a little bit about the Sioux Falls Arena, but to keep that in context to what else is going on around us, the Pinnacle Bank Arena in Lincoln is going to open up next year. It's going to seat between 13,000 and 14,000. And again, that's just the fixed seating, not the concert seating. The CenturyLink Center in Omaha opened several years ago at 17,500. The Fargo Dome opened in 1992. It seats 19,000. The Wells Fargo Arena in Des Moines opened in 2005, and it seats 15,200. The Alaris Center in Grand Forks, North Dakota opened in 2001, and it seats 21,000. Part of what's important with that is we do not simply get a concert or an event to come to Rapid City in and of itself. We are on a tour. We are part of a grouping of facilities and venues that are put together to take a concert, to take a sporting events, to many times take a national trade show from one end to the other, maybe north to south, maybe east to west. We were part of a run. In closing, I guess I'd like to say, repeat what Don Barnett had said to me earlier this morning when we talked a little bit about what we thought we would like to do with the Don Barnett Arena. Wow, there's a lot of stuff there. You have now seen the vision, you have now seen our vision for the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center. You've heard about the economic impact that we have at the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center and the possible additional future impacts that we're going to have if we add 2 parking garages, a new arena, and we repurpose the Barnett Arena. In 1972, the citizens voted in place a funding source that built the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center. In 1993, 1994, the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center bondings were paid off. In 1995, the citizens of Rapid City voted to keep that funding source in place. In fact, they kept it in place and they created 2 funding sources out of it. The first funding source, the first half of the penny that they voted to keep in place, we call the CIP funds, the CIP projects, capital improvement projects. That one is the funding that pays for infrastructure, roads, sewer, water, more of what a lot of people would say the non-sexy projects that you have to have. That funding, that source continues today. The second half of the penny that the citizens of Rapid City voted to keep in place was called the 2012 funds and is now called the Vision funds. That second half of the penny is what has built swimming pools, museums, ice rinks, refurbished theaters, done a lot of quality of life events, quality of life complexes for the city of Rapid City. What we are asking for here tonight is to use a portion, just a portion, of the already established Vision Fund to fund a 20 to 25-year bond to build a new arena, 2 new parking garages, and to repurpose the Barnett Arena. We are not asking for any new taxes. We are not asking for any new special assessments. We are not asking for any money from already promised projects, already projects on the book. We are not asking for any new taxes. We are not asking for any new assessments. We are asking to have a portion of the existing Vision Fund. We are asking for you to make a motion tonight to fund this project. We are asking for your support to continue to help the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center continue to be as important to the city of Rapid City for the next 35 years as it has been for the last 35 years. All right, I believe our presentation, as we have it, is officially complete, and we are all here to answer any of the questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you. And I'm really surprised to see that there are some questions. Chad?
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to thank you very much for that excellent presentation. And I guess I'll just start this off early and make a motion to go ahead and approve your request. And,
Okay, we have a motion to approve the request by Alderman Lewis and a second by Alderwoman Doyle. Any other? Yes, Chad, you can continue.
Then I do have a question for you, Brian. Can you tell me the time frame we're looking at here?
If I have my druthers, the ground would have already been broke, obviously, and we're ready to roll. In looking at the way the 2012 Vision Fund is put together, there is a bonding in process currently to pay for prior projects. There will be monies that are freed up between 2013 and 2014. In order for us to create a hole in the ground and start building, we need an architectural plan. And that architectural plan will probably take around 9 months, maybe a year. Donovan gets his way 2 years, if I get my way less. But we are asking to move forward with the architectural plans right away, and we'd love to have some form of a groundbreaking in 2013.
Excellent. I appreciate that. Well, like I said, my grandfather was the original clerk of the works in the original Civic Center, Orville Schurz, and I was there. I had the pleasure of being there when I was just a little boy. Saw Elvis Presley, my first concert I ever saw in my life. Dated myself a little bit there. I wasn't really old enough to appreciate it, but the fact of the matter is, like Donovan alluded to earlier, this took some vision from people back then to realize what they were creating, to take the step to look forward into the future, and to build a facility that has lasted us and served us quite well for a number of years. And I really appreciate what you folks have tried to do here, what you're trying to bring forward, and I 100% approve. Will be voting in approval of it and support it. And I really thank you once again for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Sasso?
Thank you, Chair. Let's see. Actually, excellent presentation all the way around. Lots of vision involved. A few questions. I guess one is, what portion of the half penny?
We have done some exceptionally preliminary looks at what we would need to pay off a bonding for the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center expansion. And looking at a 20-year bond to a 25-year bond, that would require somewhere in the neighborhood of about $9 million per year to pay a bond off. In looking at the projections that the Finance Office has for the half penny, that is the Vision Fund, in the year 2012, they are projecting in excess of $11 million just for that half penny. And looking 20 years from today into the year 2033, they are projecting a total per year for that half penny coming in of about $19.5 million. So depending on which year you're talking about, it could be a majority of it to the last year's where it would be less than half of it.
Okay. If I may, a couple more questions. Let's see. One, has there been any thought in possibly selling the name for the Civic Center to raise additional funds?
We've had very preliminary discussions of that, and I believe that naming rights will come into play. We will need to get a true expert at that to come in. It's one thing for us to sell some of our marketing, which we do in-house for, to us, $50,000 or $100,000 sounds like a lot. But when you get to the level of naming rights, it's going to be millions. And you have to really look at the expertise, not only from the salesmanship or saleswomanship, but also who is the right market. So we have spoken about that briefly. That is definitely going to be a major, probably national firm that comes in and does that.
Okay. Also, knowing, I guess, one of the challenges is also the hotel space. Any ideas on that? Skyways connecting what's there? Is that?
I love that question. Wasn't anticipating that one. We have talked extensively that this parking structure must be connected to the existing Rushmore Plaza Civic Center. We say we have weather here, and honestly, so does Minneapolis, yeah, so does St. Paul, and so does Denver. But if you look at those facilities traditionally, it's connected with skyways, it's connected with skywalks, it's connected with cover walks. And our current projections show the parking structure being absolutely connected to the facility. And we have had negotiations and talks with our existing hotel that we would like them to connect to our convention space. So those conversations have been had and quite honestly are going on right now. And I absolutely believe that if we're going to serve the people of Western South Dakota and the Midwest appropriately and properly, we have to have connected walkways. We provide shuttles. We have 5 shuttles. We provide them all over our parking lots. And it's still the number one complaint we get is they've got to get out of their car, get rained on, get snowed on, even to get into a shuttle. So having that ability to get through a skywalk is absolutely imperative.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Laurenti.
I have some financial questions, if you could. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Stone, I believe it was, if you would, please. Thank you. I had some questions on, and I don't know if you need to look at the information, but the assumptions on the outside of the complex, the financial impacts and the doubling, that type of financial impact. My questions are regarding the areas of the lodging, the food, the retail, the transportation. Are there assumptions about population growth within the region that go along with this? That's one part of it. And then the other part is there an assumption about proportional growth in all of those areas as well in those financial impacts with the new center?
I'm not sure I understand the second question.
Is there some dependence on some proportional increase in the lodging, the food, more retail than we have today, more transportation services than we have today, that type of thing?
No, the answer for both is really no. On the population side, I mean, we've made assumptions of attendance levels for all the various types of events. We haven't tied it to any changes in population. And to answer your second question, we haven't looked at specifically growth in those, say, retail or hotel, for example. But again, it's all kind of based on with the base of what you're doing now. So yes, on one hand, maybe in an optimistic growth scenario, maybe that means that our projections are actually conservative. Because there may be maybe there's more ancillary development that comes out of this than we would even think to anticipate. But directly, no, we haven't considered either of those.
Okay, thank you. And then I have a question for Mr. Donovan, if you will.
Sure.
The footprint as you have it today. I'm looking at the football field, and it looks like the west end is Rushmore Road. That's the west end of it. Is that correct? Have I had that right? And then the east end runs down to 5th?
Yeah, this is west, North Street.
Okay. I'm trying to picture all of the, are there any current structures in that footprint now that we have that?
No. If you take a look at our current aerial view off of a Google map from a month ago or so, basically all this is parking lot area throughout here. So we're taking over some surface parking area in that regard.
Okay, thank you.
No structures.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you all for the very good presentation, ladies and gentlemen. Very nice. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Mr. Nordstrom? Oh, I'm sorry, Richie. Let's go back to Mr. Clayton. I'm sorry. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me start. Mr. Stone, if you would, please. Forgive me, there was a part on one of the slides where we talked about projections and in the future, and I can't quite remember if it was the number of events or number of people, and it looked like basically that number tripled. And then later, the projection for the money, it was double in terms of dollars.
Mhm.
I got a little bit lost in that in terms of the math. It would seem that if one tripled, then perhaps the dollars should triple as well. And I was just wondering why the disparity there.
Well, maybe if we're able to pull up my presentation, we could go to see exactly what numbers you're talking about, and I could
Okay.
hopefully give you a good answer to them. So here is, and tell me if we're in the right place or not, so here are the projections of events and attendance.
Okay, so
we've got
basically gone from 1.1 to 1.7. And it might be just a little bit later.
Okay.
No,
Here we
no,
have, this may be at least part of what you're talking about. So in the current, and maybe I'll get the pen out here. So we've got these two numbers here. Is this possibly what you're talking about? Because there's a big change here. It largely flows out of, I mean, the main difference here, whoops, I kind of meant to underline it, not cross it out. The big difference is the ticket revenue, which doesn't go to the facility itself. That's really why we have these two columns here. And I don't want to get too confusing here, but that's why we have these two columns for both scenarios. Because the ticket sales is the best example, because this is money that is spent that we have to consider, but it's money that doesn't go to the complex itself. So I don't know if I got off on a tangent there, but this is at least one area where we've got a big difference. So maybe this is at least half of what you were talking about.
And I may have misstated that. There was a slide that caught my eye with dollars, and previous to that, it was something other than dollars we were talking about. And as I tried to recapture what I had seen previously,
Okay.
I thought the one number had tripled and the dollars had basically doubled.
I'm trying to think where that might even be the case, and nothing's coming to mind. We'll just thumb through here really quick here. I mean, here are the events in attendance. Again, going from here to here.
And even there, the as-is to the future is double. So I may well be wrong.
Okay.
And then, if I may, and Brian, I'm glad you stood up. Help me understand, if you would. You talked about when you market what we currently have in terms of the Civic Center to like a concert venue, and
Yes.
it may be moving east to west or north
Yes.
to south. How does the seating capacity play into that marketing, into that marketing position? And then help me understand as well, if you don't mind, and forgive me, I don't mean at all to sound like a naysayer. This is really exciting. I'm just trying to understand a little bit about the numbers. We currently seat 9,600, I think was the number that was put out there. How often have we had to turn people away? I guess what I'm looking at is if, in fact, we basically double and get into that 17,000 range in terms of seating capacity, how do you anticipate filling 17,000 if we might have struggled at times to fill to capacity with 9,600?
Absolutely. If we can go ahead and drop down the PowerPoint presentation. And if I may say, David's providing a copy of the economic impact, so that if you do have a question and you're going through all those numbers, you'll have an opportunity to look at that. So then you can study it and hopefully explain it. If not, we can answer it when you've had a chance to look at it more in depth. From the standpoint of the size of the Civic Center, the size of the concerts, And if I cut right to the chase, it's like, okay, if you can't sell out, we've got Bob Dylan coming up August 17th. If you can't sell out Bob Dylan on August 17th in a 9,407-seat arena, what do you need a 17,000-seat arena for? And, if I cut right to the chase. The thought process behind that is you must have the right venue for the right act. And I think through the years, whether we've been bringing the Eagles or Cher, Elton John, #1 tour 2 years ago with Taylor Swift, looking at the concerts moving forward, Carrie Underwood, Blake Shelton, those. Where we're at is that we have settled into a size of concert, a size of event to fit our events. And it is actually getting smaller as far as the numbers that we can attract. I don't want to get so silly as to say we can book the Rolling Stones. I will get as silly as to say I'd like to go after Lady Gaga. I'd like to go after U2. I would like to go after that level of concert, that level of act. They will not come into a 9,407-seat arena. Well, why not? It's more quaint, honestly. It's more quaint, it's smaller. But the reality of it is pure economics. If you sell 9,400 seats at $100, it's $940,000. Now, to me and you, that's a lot of money. But when you look at the size of the acts, even Carrie Underwood, her stage was worth $2.2 million. That stage was only good for the 36 stops she made on that tour. And then that stage was no good. It was dismantled. It was gotten rid of. But it's pure economics for your breakdown. If the Stones want $1.25 million plus 90% of the back end of every ticket sold after you've got your expenses, they get a lot more money on a 20,000-seat arena than they do on a 9,400-seat arena. So you go very far down the importance. You go very far down in the priority list for those types of acts. Generally speaking, we'll pick those acts up either on the way up or on the way down. We aren't going to hit them when they're square on. Some acts, such as a U2, you're probably never going to pick them up, or the Stones, because they're going to wait for that big arena. But in the case of some of the other acts, if you can snag them when they're going up, or you can snag them when they're going down, that's what you'll see. And we've been blessed to have things like Elton John come here. I tell people we've sold Elton John out in 7 minutes. We actually sold him out in 1 minute and 38 seconds. We would have sold many, many, many more times that amount of tickets. The likelihood we bring Elton John back is pretty minute. He needed a stop. We got lucky. East to west, north to south, you match up with your compatriots, your fellow venues. If Pepsi Center's sitting at 20,000, Excel Center's sitting at 20,000, Fargo's sitting at 20,000, Sioux Falls now starts to sit at 15,000, Quest, I think it's called Travel Inc. in Omaha is now sitting at 17,000. We just became an island. I don't match up with the people I matched up with not that long ago. Did I ramble long enough today?
That's great, because I think you hit the nail on the head right there, because if we don't compete size-wise, we fall out of the competition. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your patience, Mr. Nordstrom. It's your turn.
Quite all right, Madam Chair. Brian, is there any chance of bringing in Tim McGraw? No, I'm just kidding. I know he's probably
with
way
Faith
too.
Hill. Faith Hill and Tim McGraw.
Bring him on, please. Brian, I want to thank you and your folks that gave the presentation. Very professionally done. I am well pleased with all the images that we have in front of us and the renderings, and I hopefully get a chance to study them a little bit further. And if it wasn't for the people that are sitting behind you, the board of directors, those people that I recognize as very, very familiar faces, and if it wasn't for them sitting in the audience with you tonight, I'd be kind of questioning this. But if they're behind you, I can very much support this as well. So I thank them for coming down and taking the time to come out of their busy evenings and spend it with us. I do have a question for Mr. Stone. David Stone, please, from AECOM. Would you talk just a little bit about that multiplier? I'm used to doing dollars, how they rotate through the community, and you used the term a multiplier. Are we talking the same thing now? Well, I'm using the example of a dollar comes into this community and it turns over 7 times before it leaves the community. Are we talking the same thing?
Yes.
Could you explain that? Is 1.4 the same thing as what I used to use as 7 times turnover? Do you know?
It sounds like it is, yes. It sounds like we're talking about the same thing. Sometimes we see multipliers that are in the 5 to 7 to 10 range, but to be perfectly honest with you, those aren't quite as realistic. What the number ends up, whatever the number ends up being for a specific industry or a specific market is really dependent on, well, a lot of things, frankly, but as much as anything else, how big the city is. So a bigger an area you're considering, the higher that number will be, because the harder it is and the longer it'll take for that money to slowly flow out of it. Talking about a smaller area, the number will be lower because it's going to go out faster. So that's why they're relatively low here. If we were looking at, say, the county level, the numbers would be a little bit higher. But yes, the short answer, I believe we're talking about the same thing.
Same thing.
Yes.
Thank you. Because I think that's for me, that's one of the major selling points of this whole program as well. So once we get to see that money being circulated through the community, I'm very encouraged about that. I have a question for Mr. Robert Donovan. Curiosity question about building continuity, meaning that is it going to somewhat match the current building structure, et cetera?
As far as exterior aesthetics and,
Yes.
and such, I guess we believe there's probably opportunity to kind of use what we have on the existing facility, but kind of explore a wider range of materials, maybe a little bit more transparency and openness, a little bit more glazing, just to, that it's kind of more of the cutting edge of what you see in facilities today. Certainly making it possibly a little bit more inviting into the facility. Now it's rather austere and nothing against it. It's very well built. It was beautiful in its day. Maybe just a little bit more opportunity to look into in the future.
I have a similar question for the parking ramp. The continuity transition over to that structure as well. Can you address that for me a little bit?
As far as the
Aesthetics.
aesthetics again,
Yes.
and we probably did more work on looking at what the stadium expansion would look like and might be more of iconic. The parking ramps themselves, we were looking at how they would really function well. So developing the aesthetic of a parking ramp, it also has some opportunity. I think one of the key things, though, is just having a great transition from getting off the street into a parking garage and having a nice covered walkway all the way to the facility and such. But again, I think there's significant design and development that will come in the final stages that will maybe marry it to a more homogeneous look, and there's certainly a lot of ideas that can be brought forward with that.
I think that's one of the areas that I'd be interested in. Maybe this next question is for Brian. Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Robar. Brian, when we're talking about piecing structures together and side by side, and what I'm concerned about is when we reach an inclement weather situation, can you address the issue about leaks coming in from the weather situations, and especially when we're joining different structures to different structures? Thank you.
Good question. I can tell you currently we have those. But generally speaking, and this is interesting, the current Don Barnett Arena sits over an old drainage line from north to south to the creek. It's got about 9 feet of backfill on it. When it rains very, very hard, it does not leak from the roof. It comes up from the floor. Actually comes through some expansion joints. What we have experienced currently is when we add a new facility to it, whether that was expansion of Rushmore North, the addition of the ice arena, even back to the 80s when we added OnStar dressing rooms, those things. A lot of extra effort was put between the actual facilities being brought together because it's a natural leak point. Anybody who's ever added onto their house understands. Got to have some flashing, you got to have some tar, you got all these things you got to have. I think that is something we would have to look at, and it's very important that where they come together has to be able to take care of the weather. But I think just as importantly, and quite honestly even more important, we've got to keep the people out of the weather. If we were to have the Don Barnett Arena currently in one facility, one place, and Sioux Falls has this, we would have our theater in another place, and you would perhaps have a convention space in another place, people absolutely would get wet. They would absolutely get cold. They would absolutely get snowed on because they got to go outside to come in. One of the major advantages we have, and this is nationally, not just in South Dakota, is that everything's under one roof. Now you got to work on getting them connected right so they don't leak, but it's under one roof. So when you're in here for you've seen Ron back here for the Black Hill Stock Show and Rodeo. You've got the rodeo over here. You walk out one set of doors, you go into another set of doors, and you're watching the sale for the Angus or the Charolais. And you walk out of that set of doors. You go over and there's a petting zoo. You walk out of that set of doors, and you're buying some tack, et cetera, et cetera. It's always under one roof, and that's one of our major advantages that we have. It's under one roof, and we do our best to make sure there's no leaks.
Thank you, Brian. One more question for you, if I may, is that you spoke of the stock show as an example. I know we've got some other major local events that we facilitate there. And will we be able to address these events as the construction is going on?
Great question, and I have not approached that. It is imperative that the Don Barnett Arena stays viable and keeps doing its events as it has done while this construction takes place. Most new facilities, new arenas, if you watch on TV, they will construct the brand new facility right next to the old facility, and then many times they implode the old facility. But the existing facility stays in operation so that you can keep doing basketball or football or baseball or concerts or trade shows. It's imperative in this scenario that we keep the Don Barnett Arena as is while the construction goes on, and the repurposing of the Don Barnett Arena would occur once the new facility is opened up. So you would have the time frame to get the new facility opened and operational, and then the repurposing of the Don Barnett Arena would occur at that time. As it's been mentioned, we've got a roof, we've got some walls. While it may not be able to hang the trussing system that we need with modern concerts, it could do many other things very efficiently. So that new facility, when it comes online, then we repurpose the Don Barnett Arena.
Thank you, Brian. I look forward to seeing Faith Hill. Thanks. I'll yield the floor.
Thank you. Charity Doyle?
Well, I guess we got Richie's interest. Two questions, and one from Mr. Stone, if I may, Madam Chair.
Good exercise here.
Making sure you're paying attention. Could you go over a little bit with us just some of the conservative elements that you built into these numbers?
We do. Whenever we make projections about the future, if we do err, we do like to err on the side of conservatism and make sure that numbers are achievable and exceedable, if anything. If I were to thumb through all the different sets of numbers, again, if we have a choice between two numbers, we generally choose the lower one. Kind of as a general rule, that's kind of the short answer to the question. We don't want to, for example, project events that or a number of events even that we think is a stretch or a reach On the spending side, say, and again, this is all in the report, of course, but say, when we have different options for daily spending figures, for example, we try to keep those as conservative as possible. Again, to make sure that everything is again, if anything, exceedable.
Okay, now AECOM's been around for quite some time. Have you ever gone back and looked at, okay, here were our conservative projections, here's how it actually performed, and how does that measure up?
I thought that's where you're going with the first question. With economic impact studies, it's I don't want to make this sound like a cop-out, but it's very difficult to do that with economic impact studies because it's really almost impossible to actually track how much money was spent, for example, by all attendees for a year on restaurants in the city. So you really just have to kind of go back to all the assumptions and kind of check them off. Say, okay, is this reasonable? Do I buy this? Do I buy this? In that case, then the total number is probably at least in the right ballpark. If we're talking about a different kind of study where we're projecting, say, an event calendar with number of events and number of attendees for, say, a year, that's a lot easier to go back and check. But with economic impacts, because I don't know what the word I'm thinking of is, but because this money is spread out over an entire city, there's really no report where we could go back and say, okay, we projected X and the real number was Y, because it's hard to get your hands around that number. So then that kind of begs the question is, okay, when we do other kinds of studies, do you go back and track those? Sometimes we do. Sometimes we're right there. A lot of times, frankly, what happens between the times we do a feasibility study, for example, and something's built, maybe a number of years have passed, maybe the seating capacity is different, maybe a whole bunch of assumptions that we've made are completely different by the time something gets built. So a lot of times it's apples and oranges. So to go all the way back to your original question, it's often very difficult to do.
That's fair. I just know that in conversations we've discussed different multipliers. Why is it that you settled on the 1.4?
That's what was given to us. So the way we get these multipliers, they're put out by the federal government, the BEA, Bureau of Economic Analysis, and you order multipliers they go down to the county level. So we ordered it for the county. And then because we're looking at just a city, we had to estimate it for the city. So the city numbers would be smaller than the county numbers. But the federal government, and their model is probably very intricate and detailed, but they essentially spit out multipliers that say, okay, if you're looking at the county level on spending from hotels, the multiplier is X. If you're looking at if you're looking for a multiplier for spending right in this specific area, spending from restaurants, the multiplier is Y. And they base that, as I kind of alluded to before, they base it on things like the size of a market, proximity to other businesses and retail centers, how long, so if you have other industry in the city that is complementary to that first type of spending, the money will stay around a little bit longer. If you don't, the number gets lower and the money leaves the market more quickly. So that is a huge model that the federal government comes up with, and that's what we're given.
Okay, good. I was hoping you would say it, but I'm going to go ahead and put some words in your mouth.
Please.
I know that looking at some of these studies, it is not outside the realm of possibility for somebody to come and present a multiplier of 2 or 2.2 or something like that. And the fact that he stuck with the 1.4 shows that they really did take a conservative approach to these numbers, which is something that I like to see. So I commend your efforts. And then a question for Brian, if I may. Okay.
And I don't mean to disagree with you. I'll take a compliment anytime I can get it. But I would call those more realistic than even conservative, because again, they are what they are. If you see a higher one, I don't know what the source is.
Well,
I would question that. I would question that. But the way we get them from the government, they are what they are. So
Appreciate
realistic
that.
is the word I use. Yeah.
Okay, that works.
Conservative.
All right. Now, Brian, we talked a lot about the phases of construction for this project. What would come first?
The first thing that has to happen is we've got some conceptual drawings in Donovan's firm.
As far as the construction goes, as far as the actual.
Okay? Once we have the architectural renderings down, then it's a matter going right into construction. We're hoping that if we get going right away, we can have the groundbreaking in 2013. That groundbreaking in 2013, the absolute first thing we need to do is to do additional parking. The very first thing we do is parking. We estimate that the portion of the facility, we call it parking lot A and B, that this new arena would sit on, would occupy about 337 parking stalls total. If we are able to break ground on the first 2,000 parking stalls first and have that up and operational, it won't be finished because of the connection to the new arena. But if we have that operational first and we had those places available, then we can get into now opening up the arena. So the parking garage has to open first.
Thank you. And just to sweeten the deal a little bit, are you guys considering any valet parking? I'll leave it at that.
As long as you provide.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brian, I want to tell you this, I was exciting when I heard this coming up months ago, and this is even better, even more than what I expected. I do want to ask real quickly, parking's always been contentious, wonderful idea, and I think it's the only way to do it, building the parking first. How many more parking spots does this give us? Because I know people in Rapid City want to know.
We are suggesting, we're asking, we're begging, we're pleading for 3,500. If we cover up 337 stalls, the net effect of that's going to be 3,163, if my addition
Is that counting where the new arena is going into?
That is taking the 337 out where the new arena goes and adding then the 3,500 stalls to it.
That is absolutely amazing. I do want to know what this is going to do to the cost of my season rush tickets.
Your season rush tickets are going to be in good shape.
Okay, good. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it.
Are you done? Okay, Mr. Sasso?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question for Finance. Just wanted to, Pauline, the estimates as far as with how much of that half penny and the bond, we'd be looking at probably $2 million currently remaining for 2012, or if you can give those estimates, and what if sales tax revenue drops?
The current estimates actually for 2012 were a little less than Brian said. It's actually in 2013 that they start being over $11 million as the estimates. And if the debt payment is the $9 million, that would be $2 million left. More than likely, we will be required 125% coverage for our debt covenants, which means that we have to show that we bring in 125% of our largest annual debt payment is how it works. So if the debt payment's $9 million, we have to bring 125% in, and so that we can show that we can pay in the future. So the first year that the bond issue is out there, more than likely there will not be any additional projects. After that, you can use the money from the previous year and it can accumulate again. If we continue to see an increase in our sales tax, like Brian indicated, in 20 years down the road, we're going to be closer to a $19 million level as far as that sales tax is concerned, and so then you'll have additional monies to allocate to projects at that time. Just as a precursor to Legal and Finance, on Wednesday, our current sales tax is actually up over 9% over 2011 for the first 5 months of the year.
Thank you. Question as far as the parking garage, just wondering if on the design, if there's any consideration to allowing it so it could be built up further than the 6 levels, if that need becomes
that's been quite a trend in our area in Rapid City and parking ramps. Certainly the city ramp downtown was built and designed for several levels and built in several different phases, many years apart. And then the Pennington County facility designed the same way, going from 2 levels up to the 5 full levels that it has above grade. So certainly they were designed that way and built that way. We're looking at 6 levels to start with. There is kind of a practical level on number of levels that you want to do on a parking ramp. So, but certainly there's, we explained the campus is large. We're not tied in. We're really trying to find the best places to place parking at this time. But we still have a lot of area to, if future parking becomes an issue again, way down the road, we still have more space to build high efficiency parking and parking ramps.
Okay, and one last question. Noticing you're using the football stadium footprint, is this in hopes of luring the Vikings?
Well, it was close up until about a month ago, and then Ron, you know me too well. Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Charity because I'd like to make a comment. If there's does anyone else want to make a comment before I speak? Okay.
You have the floor.
Okay, thank you. See, I have an economic question, and that is, what if Casper or Bismarck builds a center? Did you calculate that in?
No, we haven't, and I hesitate to even ask this question. It's going to sound really stupid in this room, but how far are they from here?
They're in your the circle of influence.
Okay. I mean, I would say anything within that circle would have an effect. It's hard for me to be more specific than that off the top of my head. But if you're in the same quote-unquote market, however you consider that, then you might get to the point where certain touring events would have to choose between one or the other. And that doesn't apply to every event, but for events that tour the area, again, it might come down to an either-or choice for some events.
Okay, thank you. Brian, do they currently have event centers, Bismarck, Casper, Cheyenne? Like what sizes?
Cheyenne's event center, as we would call it, quite honestly, is the Frontier Days Rodeo. And it seats well in excess of the 12 to 15,000 for it, but it is outdoor. Cheyenne proper has a very small event center. Casper has an event center just over 10,000. I have been contacted by the management firm for the city of Casper. They are currently just in the starts of looking at how to expand their facility, how to add ice, how to add additional seating, versus looking at building a brand new arena. So Casper's just starting that. I have not been contacted by Bismarck. I know Bismarck right now, honestly, in the state of North Dakota is the odd man out with Alaris and Fargo right near them. Bismarck itself is only sitting at about 7,500 to 8,000 seats. They struggle a little bit.
They have a lot of revenue they're generating up there right now.
They do.
What do you think from your experience that you've already had with competing with these areas, the impact would be if they built something bigger than you have, or that you're requesting?
You bet. And it depends on what piece of our facility you're talking about. I loved David's presentation where he talked about the number of states we draw from, because that shows of our reach. In the concert business, I must match up with someone traditionally in less than 400 miles away from us because of the DOT requirements for the number of hours that a trucker is allowed to be behind the wheels before a rest period. Sioux Falls, in the concert industry, building larger helps me in the concert industry, Casper building larger would help me. When we go to the convention side and the trade show sides, right now Bismarck has a wonderful sports show, and that competes with us. They actively advertise locally to bring people from our area to go to Bismarck and go to their trade show, go to their sports show. So it depends on which piece of the pie you're speaking of. If they go, for instance, Casper were to build 27,000, Denver increases the Pepsi Center, perhaps Billing does that, we would be the odd man out, odd person out. The size, the numbers that we are asking for right now are very consistent, not only with existing facilities, but the facilities projecting at least into the next 7 to 8 years.
Okay.
If I could add
Sure.
something to that, I mean, arenas by their nature are only so big. The NBA or NHL level, you could see arenas over 20,000 seats. You rarely see them over 25,000 seats, and they're not easy. Pepsi Center, for example, is not easy to expand. So I wouldn't expect you to be seated out, if I can make up a term, too quickly, because once you get over a certain number of seats, you're just not going to see arenas go over a certain size. So I wouldn't expect you to be all of a sudden become too small for some of these events if you build at this size that we're talking about.
Okay. Let's see. I guess I love the whole idea. It's a tremendous opportunity. I, though, would be remiss if I didn't point out that we're looking at the biggest expenditure that I've made on this council in the 2 years, $120 million. It takes about 25 years to pay off something that's going to last for 40 years. We have some big things that are we need to pay for, not to mention our infrastructure, but the Horseman Pool, $8 to $18 million, a fire station for $10 million. Last round, economic development, which works to try to bring in new jobs into this area, $2.5 million. And so the reality is that basically we're probably going to be spending all of the vision funds except for the capital improvements, which are already desperately underfunded for 20 years, I would say. Because Pauline, you said that maybe we would have, toward the end, there would probably be maybe some extra money kicking in. So the question is this the most important item that we can spend our money on? And it's kind of a tough one because I realize it has economic impact, but so does the Horace Mann Pool, so does economic development, so does good infrastructure. And I'm sure with the picture of the football stadium in there is, it's kind of a hypnotic effect on the council. But I just wanted to point this out because it is concerning to me that we're looking at, we're bypassing the vision fund process. We're basically saying, we're going to just take it. So all of these things are of concern, and I just felt that we need to think about it. It's not because this program is, is not a fantastic experience. And even when you mentioned the IMAX Center earlier, I started going, a little puppy dog panting, wanting an IMAX Center. But I'm just have concerns about the money and that we're going to be spending. This will be it. There won't be any. There won't be any fun vision projects coming here for a long time, and like I said, I agree that it's a it's a wonderful project, but I just wanted to point out the money factor, and I know that the money comes from different funds, but it's going to be a long time before we will have money for fund another project. And Brian, did you want to say something, or?
If that would be permissible.
Okay, go ahead.
You bring a good point. Council, I don't believe there's a harder job, honestly, than what the council has to decide on a day in and day out, whether it's as simple as an aisle, or excuse me, an alley, size of a fence, up to something huge like this. Big decisions are made. I would suggest these numbers. For instance, I believe 2011, the 2012 Vision Fund was approximately $10.6 million in actual cash. I'm not off by much if I'm off. That 10.6 minus 9 is $1.6 million. Without looking at an 8 or 9% increase on a yearly basis, but just at a 2 or 3% increase on a yearly basis, much more conservative, we would quickly, within 2014, 2015, 2016, be at the 12.5 to 13 million. In keeping with just that conservative approach, within the 20 years, we'd be at $19 million. Now, is this a lot of money? Yes, it is. Is it a big decision? Yes, it is. But in those time frames, there's a fair amount of money that would be available to the council for other projects. And the way I've talked to our board of directors about the Vision Fund is that the Vision Fund was the way that the citizens of Rapid City could do something for themselves after they pay all of their property taxes and their income taxes and all those. The Vision Fund, that 1/2 of 1 penny, was a way that they could build something for themselves to reward all their hard efforts and all their hard works, whether that's a swimming pool, whether that's the Roosevelt ice rink, whatever it is. It was a way to say, okay, we worked hard, we deserve this. The last thing I would suggest is that Rapid City does have an industry, and that industry is the visitor industry. It is the tourism industry. It is the guest services. We don't have manufacturing of large scale. We don't have those types of industries. But the industry we do have is what we see around us. Mount Rushmore, Crazy Horse, the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center, the Black Hills of South Dakota. And that industry that we have, we're a vital part of that. And we help bring jobs, we help bring money to the community, and we help the community to grow and to thrive. I believe it fits very well within that, within both filling the needs for quality of life and filling the economic impact and actually creating jobs.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Doyle?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, on the video, which was fabulous, by the way, I think the mayor did a tremendous job. And one thing he said is that we are on the verge of a renaissance. If you look at what's happening downtown, it may not be here to last if we don't do something different than what we're doing now. If we don't keep up with the market that the Civic Center is starting to lose at this point, we're in a completely different market altogether. All the work that we've just put into downtown is just going to go down the toilet. It's going to be extremely short-lived. And I don't think that's what anybody downtown would want to hear. We have an opportunity right now, and this isn't even a wonderful project. This is, we have to decide as a council what the Civic Center means to Rapid City, period. If we want to be in the market of another, fine arts theater, and that's it, I mean, give it another 15 years without doing what we're talking about doing tonight, and that's what we have. It's just another place for, some of the smaller, the other category that Mr. Stone didn't talk about too much on the slideshow. This is about keeping this viable. I think I saw some slide. We had people from 22 other states, and it wasn't just one particular category. It was across the board that we're pulling in people from other countries, other states. If we don't give them a reason to come here, then we lose that. There aren't many things that we can do in the current economic condition of the country to get an economic advantage. And if we market ourselves out of what we are right now with the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center, then we're done. There's not going to be any jumping on the train. There's not going to be an opportunity to catch it. I mean, not only are we going to miss the bus, it's going to run us over. So, you know, we have a big decision. It's not a fancy, frilly project, depending on, you know, what the Civic Center means to you and the impact of the Civic Center. I mean, I see people here from the CVB and from the Chamber. I'm sure they would have a lot to say about what this could do. I know the CVB's dream is to have a 500-room hotel. We're talking about potentially partnering up with somebody, getting the extra rooms that we need, which is going to put us in an overall different market altogether for convention space. I mean, the benefits, just the ripple effect is huge. And I just really want to stress that this isn't just, you know, a project that would look good and feel good. This really has real economic impact. And the fact that the numbers, I'm still going to say conservative because I know Brian, but even realistic, it's very possible that these numbers are going to far exceed our expectations, and I think we really need to consider it. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Laurenti?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to not reiterate, but I appreciate Alderwoman Doyle's comments because they're down the same line that I'm thinking, because my earlier question about population changes and proportional increases in the other areas was right down that line. That was my thinking, is that we're not anticipating tremendous growth or even very conservative growth in many other areas. And so I think that's important for all of my colleagues to think about today's dollars, but we have to think just like the people who built the Don Barnett Center in 1972. I had to look up to see when Three Rivers Stadium was built, because that's my beloved stadium that they knocked down in 2000. And they did just that when you mentioned the fact that they build it next to it and then implode Three Rivers Stadium right next to it. I'm not bitter about that, but I'm just saying, and anyway, we need to think about that the fact, today's dollars, absolutely. In 25 years, the amount of revenue and the increase in revenue in all areas of trade in Rapid City and the surrounding area, we've got to anticipate all of that. And so I think we need to think large, just like the people did in 1972. And I think this is a great step. And my question is to any of the presenters tonight: were there areas where we pulled back? Were there areas where we were like, this is too aggressive? Were there areas there in the design, in the size, in the complex? Were there things that we cut out? Just wanted to get a feel for that.
Does anyone want to answer that, or
any one of them?
Brian?
Any one of you?
You know, thank you. From the conceptual standpoint, we haven't yet done that. We need to get a little further in the design process to make sure. Donovan and I have had conversations about the skywalks. We've had conversations about making sure the way it looks from North Street to the neighborhood. We've had those conversations. But as we're saying over here, it needs to, and I'll use this word, it cannot be an eyesore. It needs to blend. It needs to be an architectural piece of the city. It needs to be something the city of Rapid City is proud of, because it will be here for another 35 to 40 years. It must be something we're proud of. And we've started down that process. Now the question is, if we get there and it's going to be, God forbid, more expensive than we thought, then that's when that decision is made. Do you do something at that point to bring it back in budget? To this point, we have not. The seating is the right size. I do want to compete with Vermillion because I do want to do the state football championships. Why does Vermillion get it every year? I don't get that. I do want to get on that route to pick up U2. I do want to get into those routes. That is our goal. Not only for us, but for the economic impact, because it truly does have it. So at this point, we have not held back, and I hope we don't need to in the future.
All right, thank you, Brian. And I would encourage all of you, and your presentation is great, and I'm sure all of the work you've done is not for want, obviously. There's a lot of support here, and I think you're going to get the support that you need. But I would hope that you would stay aggressive, because I think we need to make this new vision. And that's what these vision funds were for, and that's what Rapid City has continued to vote these funds for. So we're putting these funds where the people wanted them back in 1972, and we're going to do it again now. And I just want to make sure that we're aggressive there, that we build something that's going to last as long as the Don Barnett Center has, if not longer. So please be aggressive. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks. Mr. Nordstrom?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Like you, I have the same concerns. I do have some reservations about the costs, the investments that we're looking at. And the economy could slip backwards, and especially even on the national level. It could still slip backwards. We are at precarious times right now even with the national economy. And I have to keep asking myself the question about, are we running up the credit card on this? And in a sense, we are kind of doing that. But I think what the bottom line comes down to me is that we are investing in the community. It's a major investment. It's a quality of life aspect that I'm looking at as well. While I appreciate your concerns, Madam Chair, I think they are legitimate. They really are. And we need to take a real hard, close look and a sharp pencil to all those numbers that you were mentioning. And but once we start seeing those numbers coming out a little bit closer scrutiny, I think this will be a good investment for the community. And I'm going to support this motion to continue forward. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Lewis?
Thank you. Well, I guess we've all kind of spoken enough about this subject this evening. I really appreciate it. Once again, all the input we've had. I would like to maybe add to the support for it just by saying, Warren Buffett always says, be cautious when others are greedy and greedy when others are cautious. And I tend to adhere to that belief. I think this is the time to step up and make the call, go for it. And I would just caution you, if you're going to try to get the stones, by the time this thing's built, you're going to need a lot more ADA.
I'll second that.
I want to really applaud the committee and all the staff and the mayor and everybody else for working to bring this forward. I think we're doing a great job, a great thing for our community, and I really see this as something that is going to add, and it's going to fill holes that we currently have, and then it'll open up a lot of new avenues. I don't think we even realize what we're going to do for our community at this point. I think that's remains unseen, and I think that we need to really step up and support this and get behind it. And I really, once again, applaud you all. Thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Sasso.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Couple things that I just felt were important to look at, and one of which is the 2020 strategic plan that we have out there. And this is supposed to be our guiding principle of what we're looking for. And goal number one is being recognized as a leader in attracting businesses. And I see this as one of the ways that if a business is looking at coming to Rapid City, they're going to look at all that we have to offer, because that is a factor. Goal number three is by 2020, Rapid City will be nationally recognized by industry trade measures as a premier regional hub for healthcare, education, entertainment, tourism, retirement, business, technology, agriculture, and transportation. Obviously, this is very, very solid in that in trying to achieve that goal. And then the last piece that I feel that is important is also the Civic Center typically is running on enterprise funds. It is not an entity where we are supporting it. It is, once it is going, it is self-sustaining. And looking at this bond and that, I see this as a strong positive, and I'd love to see you two here. And I would love to see the Stones octogenarian tour, but I will support this because completely. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? I would just want to say, Brian, that I agree to make it spectacular. I mean, you know, we're going to go down this road, so we want it to be something that people will be impressed with 40 years from now. Okay. Okay, we have a motion to fund this project, was what was said, but I probably fund more the center, let's see, fund the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center, new addition. Is that how you have the motion? Okay. So all in favor say aye. Aye. All that disagree? I forgot. All opposed, thank you. Say no. Okay, the ayes have it. So congratulations to the city. We have a second to adjourn? Okay, we have a first by Doyle and a second by Nordstrom. Okay, adjourned.